All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dads. I am your host, Quan. I go by Q, of course, and I have another special guest with me, but you have seen him before if you've been watching and keeping up with Mediocre Dads. And so you know who he is, of course, Ernest. He's joining us again for a more deeper and different topic this time. But before we get into that, I am, of course, going to allow him to reintroduce himself for those who this is your first time joining us and you don't know who he is. So, hey, Ernest, take it away.
All right. First of all, crew, let me say thank you for having me on again. And also thank you for being a guest on my podcast also. Like I said, I love it when I'm on this side of the mic because I just got to talk. Yeah. That's how I feel. For all you guys who are new to me, my name is Ernest James. I am a podcaster, a speaker, a author, amongst other things. But at my core, I'm just a person who loves people. Right. And so my mission, I would say my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. And so everything I do is kind of built around that. So my podcast, one of my podcasts, my very first podcast is called Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. And on that podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives, and where I talk about things that I've been through. And for the things that I haven't been through, I bring on other guests and coaches and speakers to address, their areas of expertise or experience in order to help, my audience to heal, whoever may be dealing with those same things. I also am a speaker, like I said, an author, a little bit of everything. But generally, it's all around helping people, man. So that's kind of my heart, just to help people to heal and, any way that I can.
Yes, absolutely. And we are appreciative of you coming back on Mediocre Dads to talk about what we're going to talk about on this episode. So forewarning, right, that we are going to be discussing suicide. And so if you are watching this and you for whatever reason you feel like, something's happening, you know what I mean? Like, please, one, seek help. And then two, take a break, take a mental break, if it's too much, right? Our goal here is not to, set people off or make them feel like, hey, this is the right direction to go if you're feeling that way. Our goal here is to talk about an issue such as suicide and the impact it has on the individual, as well as the ripple effects it has on the people that are left behind if that individual does choose to take their own life. And it's not to make people feel bad, but again, to shed more light on a topic that is discussed, but I do think discussed very surface level and very, very easily, just to say like, hey, it's easier, don't do it. But very few people are putting themselves in that other person's shoes to say, okay, how are they feeling? And so it's a deep topic, and we're talking about it. One, because it's important, but two, I did have a friend recently who did commit suicide, and it's really rough, because one moment they're here and the next moment they're gone, and then in your mind you're like, what could I have done to maybe sway this person to not make that decision that they did? And, a lot of people, even myself, I did it. I blame myself because I'm like, well, I should have been better. You know what I mean? And focusing so much on all these other things in my life. But then when someone dies, you start to realize, well, maybe some of these things are not as important as I've been putting them up in front as my life. Maybe, it's time for me to get out more and actually talk to people and figure out what's going on and see how I may be able to help these individuals not make that decision to take their own life. In the military, they have the 22 a day, right? To mean, 20, it's estimated that 22 soldiers take their lives every day. And I believe the number has actually gone up, but they've already taken the slogan 22 a day. So they're not going to change it. But fortunately, the number has increased, and you never want the number to increase. You want the number to decrease. But I think for a lot of people, COVID played a huge role into mental state and into causing a lot of people to kind of go back down into that hole and that shell of themselves, so to feel like maybe it's time to do that. But anyway, uh, I want to talk more about it, not necessarily about my friend, because I definitely want him to talk glorify his life, because he did leave 2 kids behind and a wife, and so I want it's very unfortunate, and that's the ripple effects in which I was talking about of what causes the impact that suicide has. It doesn't only impact you; it impacts the people around you. And it's not to try to make people feel bad, but it's just the reality of the situation. And that one of the main reasons why I brought on Ernest was because with the Deal to Heal podcast, which if you haven't seen any episodes, please, I encourage you go check out Deal to Heal podcast, because he talks about suicide. He talks about all these suicide ideations. He talks about all these things to help into other people, men, women, and everyone. He talks about the issues and mental issues that people are dealing with, and they don't feel like they have an outlet, or feel like people they have to talk to, or people don't understand them. Because I think what leads to a lot of people down this road is they're not feeling understood. They're just feeling they're feeling alone and isolated. And so with that, Ernest, I know you mentioned to me that you yourself kind of experienced suicide ideations and some of those things. So if by all means, please, do you mind sharing with us some of the things you experienced and the impacts it had on you and your loved ones?
Yeah. So before I even get into my story, I want to connect with a little bit about what you said. Being in the military and having a friend that committed suicide. So I'm actually I've been blessed to be a part of a organization the last couple of years called the Forgiveness Mission, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk about forgiveness, everything that has to do with forgiveness. Forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, that whole thing. But the way that the Forgiveness Mission started is a friend of mine actually works for the VA. And so they were having a meeting, and in this meeting, they was talking about the veterans who were committing suicide and how those numbers had, was going up during this particular time. And this was even before COVID, and so definitely during COVID, it went up some more. And so, so when we were having this conversation, and now this was a couple of years ago, like I said, this was pre-COVID, when they was looking at the numbers then. And so she was moved to do something. She wanted to do something, with this information. And so she started the Forgiveness Mission, and she actually had a in-person event at a library. And after she had did it, people was asking her, when you going to do it again, everything. And she was like, well, she was kind of was a one-off type deal, And so we met. I didn't even know her at that time, but I think we met after COVID. No, yeah, we met like maybe in the middle of COVID. We met. And so, and I was talking, she shared it with me that she had did this event and it had been pressing on her to do it again. And by this time, I think it had been like a year or two in between since she had the last one. And so we talked about it, and I was like, well, I'm supportive of it. I definitely help you out whichever way I can. And so we decided to go virtual with it, and we went virtual. And so we started doing them every quarter of the year. And so, that's one a quarter. So that's 4 a year. This year, we actually went to every other month. So which actually only turns out to be one extra workshop. But but that whole movement that we've been doing it for, I think we're 2 years in now since I've been involved in it. But it started from noticing the amounts of suicides in the VA with the veterans, and so yes, it is something that we don't talk about enough. Something that we're not having the conversations, but yet it's happening every day. So it needs to be addressed. With that being said, with my own experience, I'm gonna go back even before my experience, right? Because I know my pre-suicidal ideations was different than the after, right? And so my I kind of think I felt like a lot of other people who don't understand suicide and don't understand the things that the person is going through in the midst of it, right? And so even myself at that time, I thought that suicide was a selfish act. Right. I'm like, no, you're just thinking about yourself. You want to, end your problems, but your hurt doesn't end. It just transfers to the people that you leave behind, and I have my own thoughts about that. Like, no, that's just, for lack of a better term, like a coward's way out. It's like, no, I'm just going to take myself out and everybody else had to fend for themselves. So that was my thoughts, my own personal thoughts at that time. So a couple years ago, probably been over 10 years now, but at this time I was married to my first wife. I had my daughter. Life was good at that time, right? I was making pretty good money as a bricklayer. She worked at the prison with her mom. Her mom also worked at the prison. So we made decent money. We was in our 20s, early 20s. We already had a house. I had a motorcycle. I had a truck. I had bought her a Camry. It's like the little American dream, right? Yeah. Early. We were still in our 20s, and so we are on this trajectory, and it's like everything is going great. Then we got the news that her mom got sick. And now me and her mom was really close, and so she got sick, and then we found out that it was cancer. And so by the time that we found out, it was pretty far into it. And she definitely lived past the time period that they gave her, but eventually, it took its toll on her, and she passed away. And so that took a hit on me. Right. Because like I said, we were really close. And during that time period, it also hit in my marriage, right? To the point that we were having our own issues, not saying that, was a major part of it, but that's definitely added on to whatever things we were already dealing with, and then the economy slowed down. So that hit me with the finances. Right. And so I tell people that at that time I was going through a D life, right? Excuse me. I was in depression. I was going through divorce. I was in debt. My mother-in-law at the time passed away. And then 3 years later, my own mom passed away from cancer also. Right. Yeah, and so now I got all this stuff going on at the same time. Right. And one of the things that I tell people about suicide is a lot of time we're looking at the things that we can't control, right? And so when we're looking at these things that we can't control, we end up having a feeling of hopelessness and helplessness, right? And to the point that it just becomes so overwhelming. It's like, man, what can I do? I can't do nothing. I can't even control my own life. Like life is happening to me, not for me. You know what I mean? It's like things are just happening and I can't control it. And so that's how I felt. That was kind of what I was going through at that time. And so that was one of the things, and so I'm dealing with that. End up, mother-in-law passed away, mom passed away, end up actually getting divorced, and divorce is what it is. It's not always pretty, and so we have our struggles in the midst of that. And like I said, the economy goes down, so construction slows down, so everything is just hitting out at the same time, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to get through it, and I'm just like, man, I can't do nothing. Like everything is falling apart. I can't do nothing about it. And my own thoughts was I should just take my own life. And that way, at least I won't be a burden on the people that I love, right? And so that's one of the things that I learned even in that was the person that's in the midst of that, they are thinking about the other people, right? Because I thought about my daughter. I thought about my ex-wife. I thought about my other family members who I was with, because now I'm living with other people. I used to have my house. I gave my ex-wife the house in the divorce. So now I'm staying back with family, and it's like now I'm a burden because now, of course, still the economy is still going down. So I don't have the finances, to even not only take care of myself, but even to really help, with the household whose house I'm staying at, and so it's like, man, I can't do anything. And so you're thinking like, man, if I can't do anything for myself, at least I can take myself out of the way so that I'm not a burden on everyone else. And so you start having those thoughts that everybody will be better off without me if I wasn't here. Everything would be, and of course it's mindset in a way that is the way that you're looking at things. But when you're depressed, when you're in that dark space, you have no choice but to look at everything darkly. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, everything does look better. It's like, oh, they'll be okay if I wasn't here. This will work out if I wasn't here. They'll be able to move this way if I wasn't here. You know what I'm saying? But it's just really, you're just in this space where everything is dark and the littlest things, there's like a glimpse of light for everyone else, but not for yourself, And so that was my first thing. And then the one thing that I learned in the midst of it, and what I tell everybody when I kind of talk about how I overcame it, I say I had to learn to have fun, FUN. And I'm a person that's big on acronyms. And so FUN, the word fun stands for focus, unite, and normalize, right? And so first I had to focus. What I realized was the things that I was focusing on, I couldn't change. I couldn't change the fact that I was in debt because it wasn't no work. I couldn't change the fact that I was getting divorced because it was what it was, and we were already at that point. I couldn't change the fact that my mother-in-law had passed away. I couldn't change the fact that my mom had passed away. All of these things that was hurting me so much, I couldn't do anything about. And me focusing on it just made me feel hopeless and helpless. And so I had to change my focus and put my focus on something that I could control. And so one of the things that helped me get through was I began to think about my daughter. My daughter at that time was probably maybe like 5 or 6, maybe 7, right in that age group, right? And my daughter was a daddy's girl and still is, right? So now she's going to be 21 in a couple months. And so she was a daddy's girl. So everywhere I went, she was there. She was with me, and one of the things that happened one day, would happen more than once, but one particular day that I remember vividly, the first time it happened, me and her were playing, and in the midst of us playing, she just started crying. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, I miss my grandmothers, right? Because at this time, both of her grandmothers had passed away. And so fast forward now, when I'm in this space where, okay, what can I do? Let me change my focus. I began to think about my daughter. And I'm like, number one, she's a daddy's girl. Number two, she's already lost both of her grandmothers. And if she loses me, what is that going to do to her? So now there's 3 of the most important people in her life that you done lost before she even turned 10. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, okay, if nothing else, I got to stay here for her. And so that's why I put all my effort, all my focus on making sure that I show up for her every day, making sure that I wake up. If I can't find a light for myself, then I'm gonna put my focus on her. I'm gonna make sure that I show up for her and make sure that she's okay. I make sure that I'm making sure she's all right, and so that's what I did. I had to change my focus. And so the F stands for focus, wherever you have to put your focus, because I've had therapists on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and we've had this conversation, and I'm like, well, I had to change my focus off of myself because I can help myself at that time. There was nothing I could do to change the position that I was in. So I had to change my focus and put it on something that I could control, which was being there for my daughter. And then they're like, well, we trying to teach people to, focus on themselves and work out whatever they need to work out, whatever. So I'm not a therapist. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell you what to focus on. So all I say is whatever it is that you need to focus on that. For me, I had to take the focus off of myself. If you listen to the therapist, they might tell you put the focus on yourself. You figure that out, right? But whatever it is, focus on something that gives you hope. Focus on something that you can control, that you can move forward, even if just a little bit a day. You know what I mean? Even if just, I don't feel like it today, but at least I'm going to get out of the bed and I'm going to make the bed. I might stay in my pajamas all day, but at least I got out the bed. You know what I mean? So just do one step at a time, whatever that focus is, just begin to take those little steps, to focus and get yourself out of that. The U in the word fun stands for unite. So one of the things that I end up doing when my mother-in-law passed away, I end up going to bereavement counseling, right? And I went there, and it's supposed to be for a certain amount of weeks. I think it was like maybe 6 or 7 weeks or something like that. But I went there and I really enjoyed it, right? It really helped me. I really enjoyed it. Again, I'm a person that likes to help people. And so, just being able to be in this group, I think we met once a week. Every week we're in this group and we're talking about, the things that we're dealing with as far as our loved ones that have passed away. We're just talking and encouraging each other and sharing. And I really liked it. And so I ended up staying there and I became a volunteer. So I became a volunteer and I ended up staying with the program for maybe a little bit over a year. And so what I learned in that was you have to find like-minded people. You have to find people that can connect with whatever it is that you're going through, right? Because a lot of times we find ourselves feeling by ourselves because we feel like we're the only one. And a lot of times we feel like we're the only one because we make ourselves the only one, right? It's like nobody understands me. Nobody understands what I'm going through. But in reality, we really haven't looked to see if there was somebody that understood what I was going through. And, like the Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. So anything that you're dealing with, somebody has dealt with it or somebody is currently dealing with it. And so you have to find those groups of people, wherever it is, whether it's, especially with online, it's so easy to find stuff now online, Facebook or whatever, social media. It's easy to find those groups, those niches. Like, you know what, I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with, drug issues. Let me find some people that talk about dealing with drugs. I find it's, dealing with suicidal ideations. Let me find a group that deals with suicide ideations from other people that's been through it. And so it's so easy to find, but that's what you want to do. You want to find like-minded people because a lot of times we feel bad or we feel upset when sometimes we talk to somebody and they give you those cliche answers like, oh, it's going to be better tomorrow or each day it'll be better, and all of those things. And you don't understand what I'm going through, and you give me these little matchbox, fortune cookie card answers, to my problems, and that's not helping me. But when you get into a room with people that really understand what you've dealt with or really understand what you're going through because they've been through it and they've lived through it, then you already know, I can be vulnerable in this space because everybody here is just like me or was just like me, and so you get to have those conversations. And so that's the U in the word fund. It's for unite. And then the N stands for normalize. So another terminology that came from the bereavement sessions that I had is finding your new normal, right? And so when you're going through something or when you've been through whatever your experience is, once you have gone through that experience, your life is never the same. Whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, everything changes us, right? So what we knew as normal yesterday, then we have this life-changing event, good or bad. So tomorrow, now you have a new normal because things have changed. And so the idea is to find your new normal, right? So now that, okay, I was dealing with suicidal ideations. I was dealing with the things that I couldn't control. But now that I've learned to focus on the things that I can control, and now I have a reason to get up in the morning, I have that energy to get up. And now I've connected with, like-minded people and they're helping me get through this. Now I can look at my life and say, okay, what is my life now? What is my life today? What is that new normal that I have today? And now that I realize, like, okay, this is what normal is now. When my mom passed away and after my mother-in-law passed away, okay, this is the new normal. I don't get to talk to mom every day no more. You know what I'm saying? I don't get to just pop up at her house and do the visits, but this is my new normal now. So even though that part has changed, I still can live. I still have breath. I still have life to live. I still have loved ones that are still here. I still have people that's dependent on me. I still have a purpose in this world, And so you begin to recognize all the things that you still have in this new normal because everything changed, but everything can still be normal. It just be new. But now that we can come to the point where we can embrace the new, then we can live day by day and work our way out of it. So those were the things that helped me get through, coming out of that, my own depression and having suicidal thoughts and all of that. And so I'm very vocal about it. I don't mind telling the story. I've told it a whole lot of times, on my podcast or other people's podcasts, because especially when I'm on men podcasts, because we hold so much in as men, and a lot of times the things that we hold on in is because we don't want to look weak amongst our peers. We don't want to look weak amongst our mates or our family. And so we just hold things in. And even if that's not the case, sometimes we just hold things in because we might be ashamed. So I remember one of the first times that I shared that story on the podcast, and I always share on my podcast with my family, but like, hey, look, of course, like, look, I did, one of those type things. And so, and one of them, one of my baby sister watched it. And after she watched it, she called me. She said, how is it that you went through all of that to the point that you wanted to kill yourself? And none of us know. I got 8 siblings, and none of us all together. She was like, none of us know. You know what I mean? And I said, well, we're not having the conversations. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, it's not, when you're going through that, you don't walk around with a sign saying, I think I might kill myself today. You know what I'm saying? You're just kind of going through the motions. And because you're not having the conversations, nobody will know. That's why it's usually always a surprise when it happens, because nobody knows, because nobody's not asking the questions. Nobody's having the conversation. And so even after having that conversation with her, that made me even more vocal about it, because I'm like, we need to start having the conversations. We need to ask, when we ask, hey, how you doing? And we get that first answer, then we need to follow up with, no, but how you really doing? Because a lot of times, especially with men, you say, how you doing? We can be like, oh, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Everything is going on in the back of your mind, but the first thing you're going to say is, I'm good. But that's when we got to press a little bit harder. Like, no, but for real, like, how you really doing? Sincerely, and when the person can tell that you are sincere, like, oh, you really want to know how I'm doing, and especially as men, to be vulnerable and be like, yo, how you really doing? And being able to have those conversations, and we start having it, and it's just opened up all kind of doors for us, as men, as people in general, but definitely as men. I always say somebody has to take the first step, and somebody has to be vulnerable first. So I'm like, hey, well, let me tell you my story. So once I tell you about me, my divorce and my depression and the deaths I had and suicidal ideations, and once I get done telling you all that, you're like, oh, well, look, let me tell you what I was dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of opens that door. So that's why I'm very vocal about it. Just like, look, somebody got to have the conversations. Somebody got to start it.
Yeah. And first and foremost, I do definitely appreciate you sharing that with me, and then with the rest of my audience as well. I appreciate, because you said so much, but I want to hit on a few points that you made. But one, the acronym, right? You said you like using acronyms. The Army loves using acronyms, so I totally get it. All of my military friends who are watching this, we speak in acronyms, and it's so funny because half the time we don't even notice it, but then when you do start to notice it, you're like, hey, do we sound crazy? Do we sound ridiculous? You know what I mean? Like, but I just thought it was funny when you said, you like acronyms. The Army speaks in acronyms. That's where you live. Half of the acronyms don't even make sense, by the way, but we don't need to get into that. But that fun acronym that you used, I think that is a great tool for anybody and everybody who's feeling suicidal or feeling like they're not worth it, right? Because what I'll start with is and I only talk to my experiences. And so in the military, mental health is a big deal, and we have access to it's called behavioral health, and we can go see a psychologist, a therapist, a social worker, or some sort of counselor, to get that help that we might need or definitely in need of. But the problem is, there's not enough counselors, therapists, people out there working in comparison to the amount of people that actually need help in the military. And so, I'm going to share my brother's business here for a moment. He was going through some things, and similar incident, and what you, as a matter of fact, you were going through. Not to put his business completely out there, but he going through that, and he was at the start of it, and I remember him saying like, yeah, man, like this is yeah, this is getting real rough. I was like, hey man, you need to, like, I'm not a trained therapist. Like I don't know what to say to kind of to help you get through this, or like I could say some things that might make you feel better now, but like when you go home, like I don't know what's going to, like, I don't know if you're going to be good, if that's going to hold you over until,
Right.
till tomorrow. And so I remember saying, hey man, go make an appointment with behavioral health, and, just talk to a trained professional to maybe help you, guide you, and get you on the right track, of feeling better. He went and did it. And this was October, and they were like, yep, first available appointment is December. And so I remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, so you want an individual has come to you and says, hey, I am in need of dire help, and it's October, and you're telling this individual, hey, that sucks, but come back in December when you actually have an appointment. Listen, that to me is just we cannot sit here and put all this money towards all these different things in the United States, and whether it's to the military, to different programs, all these things, and then skimp out on some of these programs that really need the money and the funds to service the people that they need to help, and it just hurts and it's annoying, because I remember thinking like, okay, so now for like next 2 months, like, I have to make sure that my brother's good, and whatever that looks like, I have to make sure he's good, because like once he starts going, he can get a repeated, more appointments easier, but it's just getting the appointment that was the hard part. And so like, so rough for service members to get appointments and to actually talk to people. And so this is why I encourage, men's groups. This is why I talk, I'm a devout believer. I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins. And so I go to church, and I don't say that just to make myself seem holier than thou, but I say that because, I live and breathe what the Holy Bible says, and it says a lot of things that, that can help us. But I know for some people, they may not be believers, and they're Christianity, faith, they're turned off by it because of the church or whatever the case might be. But I tell people, it's like, regardless of how you feel about the church, if you get involved in a men's group, especially a Christian men's group, and you go there and you just check it out, right? You would be surprised about how many of those men there are not necessarily in the same shoe where you're like, I want to commit suicide, but they're not necessarily overly Christian in your face about it, but they're just kind of in a place where they just need that the surrounding of men, and talk to other men about what they're going through and the impact it has. It's so powerful, because I've seen when men come from real big men and introverts leave there huge extroverts and not want to leave. You know what I mean? And so I encourage men, please talk to people. I wanted to give a statistic from the CDC that I was looking at, and that I found. It's really unfortunate, but I wanted to give this because I felt like, people should hear this, right? And so it said, what would it say? So where am I looking at? Oh, okay. So it says 183 people died by suicide in the United States, and this is in 2021. It said that is one death every 11 minutes. Think about, like, in 2021, every 11 minutes we're losing somebody. Every 11 minutes. 11 minutes is hey, I'll play with you in 10 minutes, sweetie. Hold on. Right? That's how much that time that is. You know what I mean? Like I'm speechless by that number. And it goes on to even say, the suicide rate among males in 2021 was approximately 4 times higher than the rate among females. Males make up 50% of the population, but nearly 80% of the suicides. 80%. As men, we make up 80% of the suicides within the United States in 2021. I can only pray and hope that number's gone down, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it has.
coming right out of COVID, I definitely could probably tell you for a fact that it hasn't went down.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
I know one of the statistics that we were looking at, I don't know the exact number, but even with doing the workshops, we kind of look at the numbers and just the amount of African American suicides that's went up.
Yeah.
African American males to be specific, that went up since COVID. And even with that number that you were just saying, I'm looking at the time that we are, on this podcast. We're 35 minutes in. That means just in the time of us talking, 3 people have lost their lives,
Yeah.
and that's just how quick it is, and not only how quick it is, but then that's just how, for lack of a better term, normal it is. That's how
Yeah.
often is happening, And as men, a lot of times, like I said, it's because we hold so much in and we're not having the conversations, and we never know what each other is dealing with, right? Mos Def, the rapper Mos Def, wrote a song. I think it's called Mathematics. It's a older song, one of his earlier
Mm.
things. But one of the lines in the song is, "It's the straw that broke the camel's back, but here's the secret: it's not the straw that's on top, but it's the millions underneath it." Right?
Mm.
Because so often, especially when people commit suicide, we on the outside is quick to judge them by the things that we can see.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going through a divorce and he killed himself because of that. Oh, there's so many women out here. Oh, he lost his job. He killed himself over that. There's all these jobs out here. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Because of what
Yeah.
we can see. But generally, there's so much more up under that, right? So I take
Oh, yeah.
myself, for example, with the death of my mom, the death of my mother-in-law. You can't see that
Yeah.
in my depression. You can't see that. You know what I'm saying? Me losing not necessarily losing my job, but the economy slowing down. But you don't know how much money I got, so you can't see that either. So the
Yeah.
only thing probably in that time that someone could see was my divorce, right? That I'm actually, okay, you were married, now you're not married. Okay, I can see you got a divorce. So if I was to have taken my own life during that time, that would probably be the first thing people talk about. Oh, he went through a divorce and he, killed himself after he got through the divorce. That divorce was just what you saw. But I was
Yeah.
still dealing with depression. I still was in debt. I still was dealing with the death of my mom. I still was dealing with the death of my mother-in-law. You know what I'm saying? That's all the stuff that you can't see. And then so oftentimes we don't know what people are going through. We don't know what people are dealing with, and so we can't be so quick to judge. And that's why I said I would like us to make it normal to start having the conversations that when you ask somebody how they doing, and they give you that first generic answer, then ask them again, like,
Yeah.
tell me the real answer, and hopefully do it from a sincere place. If you really don't want to know, don't ask,
Yeah.
because it's only gonna isolate them more, because now it's like, oh, so now they're trying to show pity on me when they really don't care how I'm doing. You know what I mean? So if you
Right.
don't really care to know, then don't ask. But if you
Yeah.
really are trying to help someone, you really are want to make that connection and allow someone to have the chance to get some things off their chest, to share, to be vulnerable, then ask that follow-up question, man, how you really doing today? And then be that real true listening ear to see and listen to what they're actually going through.
Yeah, I was talking to when I was talking to Dave actually on his dad space, and the topic had come up, and what me and him were talking about was how a lot of people are very surface level. Everything's very surface level. Hey, how you doing? I'm good. All right, cool. And then everybody just moves on, and then we were talking about this because my friend who just recently who committed suicide, and even I had a soldier previously who some years back committed suicide. They had something in common, and that was that they were usually the happiest individuals that you would ever see. Most of the time when it came to them, you know, they were the ones they were uplifting everybody else. And so, most people didn't think like, oh, that individual would never do that because they're always happy. They never seem to have a reason to be sad. but they were really good at masking and showing you what you wanted to see versus what they were really hiding, which was sadness, depression, anxiety, all these things going on. And no one ever asking them the questions that they were asking everybody else. And so, to kind of caveat what you were saying is, surface level conversations, right? Like if you genuinely want to know, right, and asking people, ask someone, someone you care about, say, hey man, how's it going? How you doing? Oh, I'm good. No, man, like tell me really how you doing. Like tell me what's going on, and you'd be surprised on how many people who have a willingness to open up and kind of because they just want to release that what they have pent up on their brain and then in their heart, right? And I remember having to ask some people that I know, like, hey, are you thinking about committing suicide? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Like, kind of what's going on, man? You kind of seem off, or whatever the case might be, and that just kind of opened the door to being like, yeah, I do need some help, and just remembering, like, okay, boom, the Army kind of has their they have it's called ACE. Ask, care, escort. So basically asking, do you feel like, do you want to commit suicide? Or do you want to kill yourself? Right. Even being more direct, do you want to kill yourself? And then care being kind of like, all right, hey, like, kind of talk to me a little bit. But then as you're doing the care part, escort them to behavioral health, escort them to someone who has the training to better handle a person experiencing these emotions and this overwhelming feeling of like, it would be better if I wasn't here. And so, with my friend recently who just passed, I remember talking to my boss and he brought something up. He said, we had a class to talking to the soldiers about, all these things going on and if people were feeling this type of way. And he said, I need to ask you guys a real question, something you guys, you have to rationalize with yourself. And that is, if you did ask somebody, say, hey man, are you thinking about killing yourself? And they said, yes. Do you feel comfortable to continue that conversation to get them the help they need? Are you capable of continuing that conversation and getting the help they need? Or is that their answer of yes, going to intimidate you? And that's not a bad thing, right? Not everybody's coped or built to deal with people in a real bad situation, right? But is that going to deter you? Is that going to make you be like, okay, well, good luck with that type? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that going to scare you, intimidate you, and like kind of like, oh, it's more than I asked for, right? And so it's like, don't just ask because we're telling you in training, like part of our training, that like that's something you need to do if you see some of the signs that you're seeing. No. Instead, go get somebody else that is capable of asking that question, and then also dealing with what comes with yes, right? Being able to say, all right, hold on, let's unpack that a little bit. Can you explain to me kind of how you're feeling, what led you to that? And then also at the same time being able to help them and escort them to a place where they feel safer and they feel they're calming down. And then there's also someone else there that can take them in and say, all right, hey, kind of a more trained professional to help take them in, right? And so that's the kind of the reality of it is don't just ask the question just because Quan said ask the question. No. Ask it if you feel comfortable dealing with what comes with if they said yes, right? And again, if you're not and but you still see like, hey, something's off, get somebody that can, right? Because we still want to get these individuals help. We still want to get these people help. I wanted to ask you though, you mentioned in the beginning of your story that you're talking, your experience. I won't call it a story, but your experience. You mentioned in the beginning of your experience, as you were going through all these things, you got to a moment where you said, like, it might be better if I just killed myself, right? So was that like an immediate, like it wasn't there and then it was there, or was there something that you kind of felt gradually building up that you're like, well, what if? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it kind of builds up, right? Because as you're dealing with everything that you're dealing with, right? And the more hopeless and helpless that you feel is like I can't change anything. I can't make anything better. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm dealing with my divorce. We're getting divorced. That ship is sailed. I can't fix it. My mom passed away. I can't fix it. the debt, I ain't got no money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then the economy slowed down. So I can't even go to work to make the money. You know what I mean? So that's another thing. It's like I have the health and the strength, but I don't have the opportunity. And I can't give myself the opportunity. So again, it's another thing I can't control. Right. And so as you're dealing with one thing after another, and it's like I can't do nothing about that. Then you say, all right, forget that. Let me go to the next issue. Well, I can't do nothing about that either. And then you go to the next issue. I can't do nothing about that either. And so now it's just like one thing after another. And you're like, okay, what am I going to do? Who can I turn to? You know what I'm saying? And then as a man, and you mentioned about being the person that people come to. That's me. You know what I mean? So if everybody's coming to me with their issues, I can't come back to you and say, well, this is what I'm dealing with. I mean, I probably can and should be able to, but then it's kind of like, okay, then that's going to look, how that's going to make me look, because I'm supposed to be the rock. You know what I'm saying? And so you're dealing with that too, as a husband, as a father, as a brother, so it's like, okay, I can't say anything, so when my sister was saying, how did you go through that? Or we not know, it was like, we're not having those conversations. And if I have to be honest with myself, I probably wouldn't have had the conversation, because I was staying with my sister at that time. Two of my sisters stayed together and I was staying with them. So I was in the house with two of my sisters and I didn't tell them what I was dealing with. You know what I mean? And so we're not necessarily having the conversations. And then going back to what you said, first of all, even acknowledging, being that strong person. And if you look at the late great Robin Williams, who spent his whole life making people smile, making people laugh, uplifting, and I believe nobody couldn't have taken the time to ask him how he was doing, because that's why everybody was so shocked when he took his own life. And it's like, how is this person who's successful and rich and spends his whole life making everyone else smile be so sad at the same time? And it's because we're not having the conversations. And when you were just talking just now, I kind of had another acronym that came to my head, right? And so when we're talking about, asking people how they're doing and really finding out about it, I look at the word ask as an acronym. So first, the A would be to ask, right? To ask, okay, how are you doing? How are you really feeling? And if they say, however much that they, tell you, well, I'm feeling this way or whatever, then I would say follow up with the S will be share. Take that moment to share your own story, right? So that they can feel that camaraderie. Like, okay, I'm not by myself, So whatever you're going through, ask them how they're feeling, Yeah, man, I'm feeling bad. I'm going through this divorce or whatever. Well, I've been divorced twice. And so I understand how you feel about that, going through after being with someone that you loved for so long and whatever, so now you're sharing, and that's opening up the door more for them to share. And then that K, it is K. I was going to say acknowledge, which then actually don't start with a K, but but to lead them to, I forget what letter I was going to say, but it's K. But anyway, find out the resources, the knowledge, right? I think that's what I want to go with, knowledge. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm going to go there. But with the knowledge of finding the information and the resources, like you said, being that person to escort them to those resources. You know what I'm saying? But in the midst of it, maybe if you can't escort them right then at least have, especially if if you're premeditating these conversations, so you know that you want to be that person that's going to ask your friends how they're doing, then make sure you take out the time to look into some resources so you have some answers to give them at that time too. You know what I mean? And so that just came off the top of my head. But
I like it, right? And that's the thing, right? Is the Army, one of the things that I would say the Army's good at is coming up, when they come up with the acronyms sometimes, is because they're really easy to remember. And that's supposed to be the point of them. It's supposed to remember them. And so when you find yourself in that situation, you can refer back to that acronym and you can be like, oh, okay, boom, I know what to do. So I give you a perfect example, right? I know the ACE is a perfect example, but like another example in which we use in the military, and my military friends might make fun of me for this, is, but it's called sports. So when you're qualifying with your rifle, and you experience a malfunction, we use sports. So it's slap, pull, observe, release, trigger, squeeze. Yeah, there we go. Trigger squeeze. There we go. I had to think about it. Right. So that is sports, but it's, it's basically say if you experience a malfunction, this is your remedial action, your immediate action that you do if you experience a malfunction. If sports doesn't work, then you go down, you take a knee, and then you really observe, and you go deeper into the sports and kind of observe what's going on. I won't get into the I will get into it. Right. So slap, meaning slap the magazine. Pull the charging handle back, observe, look into the chamber, release, obviously releasing the charging handle, trigger squeeze is pulling the trigger, and I was pointing the same direction, pull the trigger to see if that corrected the malfunction, right? And we use those acronyms. So if we're in these experiences and we're in our minds on so many different things, and we can refer back to his acronyms like, oh, boom, I know what to do. I got it. I know what I'm doing. So that, and going back to ACE, that's kind of what the point of what the creation of was for the Army. When they created this was, hey, like we want an acronym that soldiers could use if they get in this incident, instead of trying to think of all these intricate things to say, they can just, okay, boom, I know what I need to do. First thing is to ask. All right, I did ask. Now I need to care. Now I need to escort, right? And so we're just going down the list and then almost checking a block and almost accomplishing a mission in that way. I will say that I have never, I will say I've never ever experienced the point of where I'm like, suicide is it, right? But have I thought to myself like, oh man, what if I wasn't here? 100%. And it was in one of the lowest moments I've been in my life and in my career. And I've talked about it before, but I failed a drug test in the military, and it was Delta 8 THC, but still I failed a drug test, and there's consequences with that. And I had to deal with those consequences. And part of those consequences, I got demoted. It's called 45 days of extra duty, meaning I had to do 45 days of just, labor, basically, whatever they told me that needed to be done, and a loss of some pay. Now, it's big because my wife is pregnant with our second daughter. So this was 2022. So my wife's pregnant with our second daughter. And so I just got back from Kuwait. And immediately getting back from Kuwait, I'm going right into this basically this I'm home but I'm not home thing, because I'm getting home super late, going to bed, waking up, doing it all over again. And so she's experiencing this pregnancy by herself. She's also raising our first daughter, and just kind of she's in her own space doing her thing, but I'm in my own head thinking like, man, how bad I let my family down, and what the possible repercussions of they could kick me out of the military. And so like I am in this place of just like pure, just like isolation, and just sadness and ups. I'm angry with myself, right? Truly, I was angry with myself. And I remember sitting there thinking, I was mowing the lawn, and I was just sitting there thinking to myself in my head, just just shaming myself, truthfully, just being like, how could you be such a piece of garbage? Truthfully, I was like, how could you be a piece of shit? I was just like, I put my family in this predicament, and now they have to deal with the consequences. And my wife, being the champion that she is, never scolded me, never said it was your fault we're here. But she knew it was, but she never said it. She never said those words of like, it's your fault. Why'd you do this to us? It was, she was, hey, I get it, babe. You're almost done. You got it. You finish the days, and then we'll figure out what happens next. And so I remember one day sitting there mowing the lawn, and one of my friends who I hadn't spoken to in a while calls me, and he goes, hey man, what's going on? And he's kind of telling me what's he got going on. And I finally just said like, yeah, man, well, this is what happened. And me expecting him to be another person who's going to scold me or just be like, hey man, better, shame on you type thing. Cause anybody who knows me, that they know that's not my thing. That's usually not my thing, what I get myself into. He's like, damn man. Well, he goes, hey, keep your head up. And, we call him Unc. He's our mentor. He's like, call Unc, let him know. He'll definitely help you out and kind of talk to you, mentor you, and guide you through some of these things. But he's like, hey man, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what you're going through. Tell me what you're thinking about. And it was having that conversation with him that I was able to realign myself and say, all right, I know what I need. I know what it is I need to do. And I remember kind of almost like getting my priorities straight for myself, right? That's what it meant for me, is like I had to get my priorities straight, and then kind of stepping into like, all right, cool. I know what it is I need to do. I know how I need to do it. Get those thoughts out of my head, and then I need to put my best foot forward. And part of that was getting into my word every day. And that's what I'd started to do. And that's helped me tremendously, reading my Bible every day to keep me in that right, that good mental place, and knowing that the Holy Spirit's here and has me and protects my family, and just reminding me that the Lord is always with me through anything and everything. I think of Job, as many people would. I think of Job. Job lost everything. And, he didn't just lose his cattle, his land, and all of his servants. He lost his children, all of his children, and his wife, or not his wife. He didn't lose his wife, but all of his children and his family. And, I think about, even with the Job, his wife told him, well, just curse God, tell God that it's his fault, and you'll be just fine. And all of his friends sitting there explaining to him like, well, you had to do something wrong that you're not telling us, and which led you to being afflicted, if you will, at how you are being afflicted. And I think of Job, and I think about how through all of that, Job kept his reliance on God. He did question God. He did ask, and he was like, why, tell me how, all these things, but he still had this wisdom to see, like, even though I'm currently in this affliction, God's got me. And so that thought process has kept me going through a lot of things that I experienced in my life. And what I try to share with a lot of people is, God's got you no matter what. And I know you can sit there and be like, yeah, it doesn't feel like that. If he does, like, I don't feel it. I don't see the things, all these good things that you're talking about. I'm telling you, it's amazing, because God works in mysterious ways. And I know that's so many people, especially growing up, we've always heard that God works in mysterious ways, but I can tell you, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Why? Because it was 2023, March of 2023. Yep, 2023. I started Mediocre Dads podcast, and from I feel like that from that part of that was part of my growth. From that moment until now, I can tell you 2023 was one of the best years of my life. And I went from 2022, where I just felt like complete shit. I'm just going to be completely, I just felt like complete shit, to 2023. I felt like I had one of the best years of my life. And there was nothing I felt like that could bring me down. And I still had a lot of stuff going on, but like, between starting Mediocre Dads, being able to talk to people and talk to a camera and just kind of like release all this built up anger, anxiety, these emotions that I was feeling, but being able to talk about it, I felt so much better. And I felt I was ready to help and receive people that needed help. Right. And so, and that's just kind of been my mission and my goal. And I know with you, with Deal to Heal, right, that's, with your experience, that's been what part of your mission has been, to help people. And I encourage you, please continue. Obviously, I know you're planning to continue, but please continue, right? Because I think, what, like I said in the beginning, I know a lot of people, especially in the military, are having these conversations, but there's very surface level conversations. No one's kind of getting into the mud and being like, nah, like, well, this is my experience. Let me tell you what happened to me. And because that opens the door for soldiers to especially younger soldiers who are feeling this, to be like, oh, like, I have a senior leader who seems like, Samson, right? Like nothing can hurt him. But then for him to tell me that, I don't look at him less than, but I respect him more, because now I do. He has been where I've been. He has experienced what I experienced, and now he's a person in which I can talk to if I'm ever feeling super low. And that opens the door for so many other people, because as you said, so many people think that, well, they wouldn't know what I'm going through. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't get it. When the reality is, you'd be really surprised. You'd be surprised how many people have felt what you felt, been where you were, been where you are, and wished that, hey, if someone would just kind of ask me a question, I definitely, let them have it, let them know what's going on in my mind. And you'd be surprised, be like, oh damn, I didn't know you were going through that. Well, let's figure it out. Let me help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So man, I didn't want this episode to be super, super depressing, right? Like that wasn't my intent, right? My intent was just to be able to talk and speak and get someone else's experience, who shed some light on it. And definitely, for those out there who may not, who may not resonate with me, because a lot of my experiences come from the military side of things, so they think they have their thoughts on military side stuff things, but so for someone like yourself who's not in the military, to be able to speak to, like, hey, I was no offense to you, but I was a regular person dealing with these things, right?
No,
and
definitely.
And so like it kind of brings the reality of this situation where people are like, oh man, like even normal people can be, or regular people are experiencing this thing. So yeah.
And let me say this real quick before we end it, just kind of bring everything together, because we started off, at least I started off talking about, the forgiveness workshop, right? Which was birthed out of my friend recognizing the rise in suicides amongst the veterans, right? And so then we talked about acronyms, and then we talked about, my story and all of that. So one of the things that I've, even as we were talking and I came up with the ASK acronym, right? That I'm a person that love acronyms. So that just kind of how my minds work. So when we're having one of our forgiveness sessions, and you were talking about how you felt at your lowest point, during that time, one of the things was someone asked, how do you begin to forgive yourself, right? And, God being God, working through me in my imagination, right? So I actually came up with an acronym for self, right in the midst of it. And after that, I kind of worked it on a little bit. And so I wrote an ebook called Forgiving Me. I'll show it real quick if you can see it. Yeah. It's called Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self-Forgiveness, right? And the word self is an acronym, and it stands for season of life, emotional state, limited information, and forgiveness by grace, right? So the main part of it is when you're facing a situation like even yourself, is like, how did I make this decision? How did I get myself here? How do I begin to even forgive myself for the decisions that I made, and now that I'm upset with myself about? Look at it from the acronym of the word self, right? And ask yourself, what was the season of life that I was in when I made that decision, right? And so I often talk about when I was younger, I'm 47 now. When I was younger, in my 20s, I was young and dumb. So there was a lot of decisions that I made just by being young and inexperienced, And so as a 47-year-old, when I look back on some of the decisions that I made, that now as an older, mature self, I could be like, man, I shouldn't have did that. But if I acknowledge that at that time, I was just young and dumb, then I can begin to say, okay, I can give myself some grace for that decision because I just made it out of being inexperienced, right? And so when we look at the emotional state, what emotional state were you in when you made that decision? And so I talk about when my mom passed away. When my mom passed away and my mother-in-law passed away, emotionally, I was shot. You know what I'm saying? So there may have been some things that I may have said. There may have been some things I may have done just out of an unbalanced emotional state that, looking back on it, hindsight is always 20/20. You know what I mean? Looking back, and it's like, oh man, I shouldn't have did that. I was wrong for that. I should have knew better than that. Yeah, but emotionally, I was all over the place. You know what I'm saying? And so I can look at that, even with that said, yeah, but you should have known better. You should have did better. But emotionally, you was a little off in that at that time period.
Yeah.
And then the last one, not the last one, but the L stands for limited information. So I talk about when I was growing up, I knew I wanted to be a bricklayer, right? I knew like in eighth grade, I wanted to be a bricklayer. High school, I wanted to be a bricklayer. Well, when I graduated from high school, I didn't know how to go about to become a bricklayer. And so what did I do? What everybody else do? I went to college and took construction classes. It wasn't until years later that I found out about the unions and the apprenticeships and the right way to go about it, and finding out even that they would pay for you to go to college and they would pay for your college while you're working it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I done wasted all this time paying to go to college. You know what I'm saying? Working as a carpenter, I got a job as a carpenter. Which was cool. I liked it. But that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a bricklayer, So even though I was still working in construction, it wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. But I can look at it and say, had I known about the unions and everything, I definitely would have done it. So I can give myself grace in that mode, because I know I was just acting out for the information that I had. All I knew was go to college and take construction classes, and so that's what I did. So I was acting on the information that I had. I just didn't have all the information. And so when we look at our life like that, and these situations that we find ourselves in, you say, okay, what was the season of life I was in? What was the emotional state I was in? What was the limited information that I had? And we look at our life and our experiences through those lenses, then we can get to the F and then say, you know what, I'm going to give forgiveness to myself by grace, because I'm going to give myself some grace, because knowing what I know of the spirit, the season I was in, the emotional state that I was in, and the limited information that I had, I can know that I was doing the best that I could at that moment. And knowing that I was doing the best that I could at that moment, I can give myself some grace and I can begin to forgive myself. And so that came out of the forgiveness workshop, full circle, which was started because of someone, recognizing the suicide. So, but yeah, so that just to leave it on a high note, right? Leave it on some help, right? That's the way to help us to kind of get out of these, funks that we find ourselves in, start to analyze that stuff, and then forgive ourselves. And then we go back to the acronym for fun. Okay, now that I recognize that, let me find something I can focus on, that I can control, that I can actually do, and then let me get around like-minded people. Let me unite with some people. Let me find some people that's going through what I've been through or have already been through it and can help guide me along the way. And then once I've done that, okay, realizing that, yes, some things have changed and it'll never be normal as the normal was, but it can be my new normal. And I can find joy and happiness in the midst of this new normal that I'm in. And so I think if we do those things, take that self-examination, and then look at it from the fun acronym and work out the fun through that suicidal ideations, then we can make it through and we can be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you telling your story. I appreciate you coming on. Before we go, I want to end with you. And, what I will say is to the Mediocre Dads audiences, thank you for joining us on this podcast and this episode, talking about this serious topic. And if you've made it all the way to the end, again, I appreciate it. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel. But that being said, I'm Q with Mediocre Dads. I'm going to let Ernest here finish it out, and I'm going to let him let Mediocre Dads audience know where they can find you. Anything you want to put out there, anything that you want to talk about, kind of share with us before we go, please. Oh, also, please talk about oh gosh, I'm already forgetting what the name of it is called.
Forgiveness mission.
the thing for the VA. I feel so terrible because
forgiveness mission. That's it.
Yeah. So if you could talk about that as well before, like I know you talked about it a lot, but if you just keep talking about it, because a place if people can refer to it, can look at some of the previous stuff you guys done, that'd be awesome. And so that people have a place they know they could go check out, definitely, if they're feeling that way. So
yeah. First of all, crew, again, let me say thank you for having me on. Definitely enjoyed being on the first time. Definitely enjoyed having you on, and then looking forward to having you on for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast.
Oh yeah.
So all of that in general, definitely great to have connected with you. To everyone, man, again, my name is Ernest James. I run 2 podcasts right now, the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I also run a podcast called the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, because I have one biological child, which is my daughter. She's not a baby no more, as I always say. She's finna be 21. But those 2 podcasts that I have, and I mentioned about the Forgiving Me, the 4-step guide to self-forgiveness, that can be found at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. There's also some other ebooks there that I think will be helpful with other areas. What else can I say? You can check me out on YouTube. Definitely Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Facebook, I'm on there. Instagram, I'm on there. And yeah, that's about it, man. Follow me. I appreciate all y'all support, whether it's the ebooks, the podcast, Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, my inspirational t-shirt line called Deal, the number 2, Heal Tees, dealtohealtees.com. So yeah, just, I don't know. Or, you can even go to dealhealfulfill.org. If you like what you heard today, go to dealhealfulfill.org, which is my main webpage, and you can even see about booking me to come out to be a speaker at one of your events, or even to headline a workshop or something, whatever.
Absolutely.
But I just look to connect with everybody, man. Again, I'm Ernest James. At my core, I'm just a person that loves people, and my mission in life is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose.
Awesome. Hey, well, again, thank you for joining us. And